All right, guys. So today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 transfer portal winners. This isn't necessarily going to be an exact power ranking of the portal. We'll look at that here in a second. But this isn't necessarily a transfer portal ranking, but the 10 biggest winners that I think have won the portal that will eventually impact the college football playoff race in some form or fashion. So before that, though, let's go ahead and look at the rankings a little bit. So as you can see, A&M is in first, but that's more quality, not necessarily quality, but quantity over quality type of thing here. Same with a few of these teams. You see Colorado here, not necessarily the top class, but definitely some quantity coming in play here, particularly like South Carolina as well. Let's go ahead and dive into my top 10 here. All right, so first off, you should be able to see it on your screen now. This isn't in any order, just 10. First off, Ole Miss. All right, so Ole Miss has won the portal, I think, without a doubt. This is probably the number one team in the portal as far as this is seriously impacting their chances next year to make the playoff. They have loaded up in this portal. You can see it on your screen now. In particular, though, all right, so Princely, edge rusher from Florida, you get a nice D-line piece coming in. Juice Wells, Antwane Wells from South Carolina. That's a huge target for Jackson Dart. But in particular, the number one recruit in the class, the number one transfer portal recruit, Walter Nolen. All right, the D lineman from Texas A&M, former 5-star. You have loaded up in the portal here. Now, I did lose somebody to Louisville. We'll get to him a little later. But they've loaded up in the portal. You see also a 4-star tight end here, Wright from Virginia Tech. And Chris Paul as well. Not that Chris Paul, not CP3, but CP Jr. Completely different. Not related, I don't think, but who knows. Linebacker from Arkansas, but Lane Kiffin has loaded up in the transfer portal, and they're pushing their chips in this season and should make a college football playoff run, I think. All right, next up here, we have Texas. All right, so they lost a lot from last season. You've got Quinn Ewers coming back, but really other than that, you have lost almost all of your offensive production. They've lost their tight end, Sanders. They've lost their receivers, A.D. Mitchell, Jordan Whittington, Xavier Worthy. They have loaded up, though, and if rumors are to be true, they're not done yet, is from what I'm hearing. But their newest one you can see at the top of your screen, Niblack, tight end, number one tight end in the portal from Alabama. They have capitalized the most on Alabama losing guys. And like I said, I don't think they're quite done yet. All right, Isaiah Bond, Alabama's number one receiver last season. Blackshire, linebacker from Alabama. But the main ones are, like I said, the receivers here. Silas Bolden, Oregon State receiver. Matthew Golden, Houston receiver. They're not necessarily bringing in the biggest receivers, but they are kind of all interchangeable. You can put them in the slot. You can put them outside. You can put them in the backfield even if you need to. And you can kind of mix and match them, get a lot of mismatch with Sark's scheme. Another one, Trey Moore, defensive end from UTSA, Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. And then this one, Mukaba from Clemson, bringing in some secondary help. And from like I said earlier, from what I've heard, they're not done in the secondary. It sounds like they might be getting a certain cornerback from Washington. Why did I say Wisconsin? Certain cornerback from Washington. You know who I'm talking about. That will definitely help them out as well. Now, that's nothing confirmed. He still has a couple of visits from what I've been told. But if they get him, yeah, Texas has definitely certified themselves as a preseason top 3 team. All right, next up here we have Syracuse. All right, so believe it or not, Fran Brown, new head coach here, has loaded up in the transfer portal. Now, will he be a good coach? That's to be determined, but we know he can recruit. That is the one thing that he definitely did at Georgia. He definitely brought in the recruits, and he's been getting that job done here at Syracuse as well. All right, so as you can see here, a lot of 3-star transfers, but there's a couple that I want to pick on particularly. All right, so obviously you've got the edge rusher from A&M, 4-star, but they brought in a couple of receivers as well. All right, so you got Zede Haynes from Georgia. You also got Meeks from Georgia. All right, so he's bringing in a couple weapons for his new quarterback who we're about to talk about, Kyle McCord. You should be able to see that right here. I think this is a huge get for Syracuse. Anytime, I don't care how good he was or how bad he was, anytime Syracuse can get Ohio State's starting quarterback to transfer in, that's a win for Syracuse. And I think, look at their schedule, call me crazy, but Syracuse is a sleeper contender next year to make the college football playoff. I know that's a huge turnaround. Now, like I said, to be determined, will Fran Brown actually be a good head coach or can he just recruit? We'll see, but that's half the battle, getting in your recruits and getting talent on the field. After that, we can make it happen with the talent. But getting Kyle McCord in here, I think, is the key. Like I said, anytime you can bring Ohio State's quarterback in, you're doing something right. And you've definitely brought in some weapons for him. I think Syracuse is going to be a real threat next year. All right, so next up here, Florida State. All right, so they weren't on my list a couple days ago, but they've really moved up over the last couple weeks. They've really capitalized. Last time, whenever I did like my way too early college football top 25, they only had 2 guys in the portal from the portal, but they've really loaded up as of late, as you can see here, and they're actually bringing in quality too, not just quantity. All right, so 4-star linebacker Murphy from Alabama, Roydell Williams, running back from Alabama. All right, looking down here, all right, this is probably another team that has benefited the most from Alabama. Earl Little, cornerback from Alabama, Terrence Ferguson, guard from Alabama, Malik Benson, wide receiver from Alabama. So you can see a bunch of Alabama guys going here as well. D lineman, all right, from West Virginia. But the main 2 I want to focus on are down here at the bottom. Marvin Jones, edge rusher from Georgia, and then DJU from Oregon State. All right, so DJU, former Clemson quarterback, you may remember him over there, was at Oregon State last year. Florida State has their Jordan Travis replacement, and I think DJU, if you surround him with the right pieces, can lead you back to the college football playoff. Well, sorry, too soon. Can get you into the college football playoff. I didn't think about that statement before I said it. Can get you into the playoff. You got 12 teams now. You can lose a game or 2 and still make the playoff. I think Florida State's in prime position to make it next year, although the ACC is going to be tough. All right, so next up here we have Louisville. All right, so another team that is loaded up in the portal out of the ACC. We've got a few teams from the ACC, actually. We'll get to another one here in a minute. But looking at your screen now, you can see all these guys. All right, so Penny Boone, Toledo running back, was the player of the year. Player of the year in his conference. All right, he's definitely bringing in some production to replace Jordan. But you definitely got a running back coming in that can help you instantly if you're Braum. But also they got their quarterback. All right, but we'll get to him in a second. Tyler Barron, this is the player I was talking about a minute ago that Ole Miss lost recently from Tennessee. He's a freak. Watch his film. You'll know what I'm talking about. Corey Brooks, receiver from Alabama. So they're not only bringing in 3 stars, they're loading up on 4 stars as well. But they got their quarterback. If I can get to it down here, they got a lot more transfer guys coming in than I thought. Tyler Shuck, all right, he has won some ball games. He's been a little injury prone, got hurt this year at Texas Tech. But Tyler Shuck, I think, is going to help Louisville out tremendously. And Louisville is set up to make another run next year and be a contender again. I know they were kind of not a seriously taken contender, but they were kind of in that prime position. If they could have just won at the end to sneak it in the playoffs somehow. All right, next up here, Oregon. All right, so Oregon has kind of solidified themselves as a preseason top 5 team. There's kind of 5 teams right now that have separated themselves. Oregon's one of them. All right, so they have loaded up just recently. All right, cornerback Cam Alexander from UTSA. Evan Stewart, 5-star receiver from Texas A&M. Jay Harris, got a running back coming in. But like I said, a lot of 4 and 5 stars here that you can see. Caldwell, 4-star D lineman from Houston. Kobe Savage, safety from Kansas State. That'll definitely help. But the big ones for me are this quarterback situation we've got going on right here. Not only did you get Dillon Gabriel from Oklahoma in, arguably Oklahoma's best player. I would argue he's better than Bo Nix even. I think Oregon's going to be legit next season. Dillon Gabriel beat Texas by himself this season at Oklahoma. But not only that, you bring in Dante Moore from UCLA, former 5-star. You were bringing in not only your now quarterback, but your future quarterback. And let's say something happens to Dillon Gabriel. You've still got your guy, Dante Moore, waiting in the wings to come in and take over. That way you don't run into a Florida State situation. All right, next up here, another team out of the ACC, Miami. All right, so this is a rather recent entry, okay? This is basically all due to Cam Ward, all right? You know Miami's already going to have talent with Mario Cristobal. He can get in talent. Now, his on-field coaching, questionable at best, to say the least. But Cam Ward, though, is legit. I've said it all along the last, month or two. Whenever he declared for the draft, I still said he didn't sign with an agent. Watch out for him to still go to Miami in the long run. Lo and behold, that's what happened. All right, so Cam Ward, I think, is going to get Miami over the hump. I think I've got them at number 12 or 13 in my way too early preseason top 25 at the moment. They're going to be a top 25 team. They're going to be legit now that they have Cam Ward, and I think a real threat in the ACC and a threat to make the college football playoff. I like Tyler Van Dyke, their quarterback last year, but he was injured a little bit, which kind of limited his mobility and just his talent overall. But Cam Ward just brings in a different element for you, dual threat, and I think Miami is going to be a serious contender next year. All right, next up on our list of winners, we have Penn State. All right, so they're more quality over quantity here. All right, But in particular, A.J. Harris, cornerback from Georgia, and then wide receiver Julian Fleming from Ohio State. All right, so with these two, Julian Fleming, let's talk about him. All right, Julian Fleming, not only did you bring in a big receiver, a big name, but you stole a receiver from Ohio State. You stole a starting receiver from one of your rival teams in your conference. Anytime you can do that in game to come to your team, that's a win. And Julian Fleming is going to give Drew Allar another weapon outside. I still think they need to add probably one more piece, receiver-wise for Allar. But Penn State is loading up, and they benefit the most from the college football playoff expansion, I think, going to 12 teams. Think back to last year, not this season, but the season before. Penn State was probably the fifth best team in the nation. They couldn't beat Michigan. They couldn't beat Ohio State, but they could beat everybody else. They were like I said, probably the fifth best team. They benefit the most. They should be in the playoff next year. Look at their schedule. They avoid Oregon. They avoid Michigan. They're set up for a playoff run with probably only one loss to Ohio State. All right, next up here we have, our next ACC team and the last one on here, NC State. All right, so North Carolina State has loaded up in the transfer portal this year. You've got Dave Doeren at coach still. I'm a big fan of Dave Doeren. He wins a ton of ball games in the ACC. Guarantees you 8-9 wins alone, despite what your roster looks like. And I would say this is probably his most talented roster he's had. All right, so looking at it here, you can see 4-star receiver Noah Rogers from Ohio State. You bring in Jordan Waters, Duke starting running back this year. If you watch them this season, he's really talented. 4-star tight end Justin Jolly from UConn. But the main one I want to focus on here, 4-star quarterback Grayson McCall from Coastal Carolina. You think back to 2020 when Coastal Carolina was really good. They played BYU in that midweek primetime game. Grayson McCall was Coastal Carolina's quarterback that year. He has won a ton of ball games at Coastal Carolina, and I think gives you a different element that you have not had here because he's a proven winner coming in. You're not just bringing in a talented quarterback. You're bringing in a guy that can win ball games, and they return some key pieces. I think NC State is going to be a college football playoff team. I have them in my preseason top 10. Grayson McCall, I think, gets them over the hump. And like I said, you bring in a receiver, you bring in another running back, you bring in a running back, you bring in another receiver. I think NC State's going to be legit next year. I think I had them in my way too early, not rankings, but playoff predictions. I think that I have them as the 3 seed right now. I think they're going to go undefeated, maybe one loss to Clemson, but NC State is a serious threat next year. Watch out for NC State. All right, and last but not least here, the team that might have honestly moved up to number 1 in the preseason rankings now because of this, Ohio State. All right, so Ohio State is loaded up, and you can see they've got a few guys here, not many, but they've got some serious pieces here. All right, so in particular, Quinshon Judkins, you pair him with Henderson, you've got a 1-2 punch that is borderline, dare I say, unstoppable. You bring in the SEC lead rusher, but you already had Travion Henderson, which is a monster in his own right. But now you can spell him with Judkins. Watch out for Ohio State's running back room. Next up, Seth McLaughlin. All right, lineman from Alabama. I know he had some crappy snaps in the semifinals, but he doesn't have to play center. He can block. He just can't freaking snaps. Move him over to guard. Problem solved. All right, and then Will Howard. You've got your quarterback. I'm a little skeptical on Will Howard. I'll be honest. I don't know how much better he is than Kyle McCord. I think he is better than Kyle McCord, but how much better, to be determined. But this is a key piece going forward for Ohio State because really it doesn't matter how good Will Howard is if you've got the weapons he does. All right, you've got receivers. You've got this almost whole team coming back. You've got Judkins and Henderson in the backfield with you. I think Ohio State is going to be legit. I have them at number 1 in my preseason top 10 right now, or top 25. And if rumors are to be true, Caleb Downs is down to like Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. So the rich get richer here. But who would you add to this list? The top 10 transfer teams, not necessarily talking about rankings, but who do you think won the transfer portal this year so far? Still to be determined because there's still a lot that can happen in the transfer portal. But so far, who do you think won the transfer portal? Let me know. Who would you add to this list? Who would you take off? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.